Welcome to The Adult Table, a podcast where we sit down with people in the SASE and our STEM community. We set the virtual table to bring in a diverse set of guests to engage in a casual conversation on their professional career and life.
With this podcast, we hope that we can bridge the gap between the hierarchy involved with growing up. We can redefine what it means to be able to figuratively sit at the adult table.
I'm one of your co-hosts, Jason Chin.
And I'm your other co-host, Jenny Chung.
Today, our friend Joe Alim joins us at the adult table. So Joe, thanks for coming on. Do you mind giving the listeners a brief introduction of yourself and your pronouns?
Sure. So I'm Joe Alim. Thanks for having me today. I go by he, him as pronouns. And I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I can start from the beginning. Where do you want me to?
Of course, yeah. Go for it. You can start from the beginning. Yeah.
Sure. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, immigrant parents. My dad is Egyptian. My mom is Malaysian. And it's a lot of very traditional immigrant stories that, are the same with my life as well. But, early journeys, everything like grades, utmost important. Are you going to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer, that kind of stuff. So nothing crazy different there. I remember as a kid, some memories of me coming home with a 98 in my report card, and I'm going where's the other 2 points? And this moment of triumph when one day, there's that weighted averages in high school with the APs and whatnot. I came back with a 101 average. It's ask me for another point, do it. And I remember going this was this moment of truth where I'd finally get a nod, and my dad looked at the paper. He's like, how did you get over 100? I was like, I'm that good. he just nodded. And I was like, this is what I've been chasing for so long.
The nod.
That's all I wanted. But yeah, just growing up, I was actually a relatively shy kid, not very outgoing, not very involved in any extracurriculars and things like that. So I'm sure we'll get to it later, but kind of joining SASE, becoming one of the first presidents, that really I think it really helped change the trajectory of what happened next.
I know you mentioned earlier the typical Asian American parents wanting to be doctor, lawyer, engineer. So was that something that you wanted to major in Northeastern earlier on just because of that, or were you pushing back? How was that journey?
Yeah, great question. I think I naturally did have engineering tendencies. I like to take things apart, put them back together. Whenever my dad was doing anything around the house, I was interested in that as well. When I was really young, I wanted to be a pilot. My grandpa was a pilot on my dad's side, and I thought it was the coolest thing. And then he became a flight engineer later in his career. And I was like, oh, that's way cool. They actually know how to fix the plane, not just fly it. I was like, I want to be a flight engineer. Along the way, I was very interested in airplanes. So that kind of continued for a while. And I thought I was interested in aerospace engineering. But then at Northeastern, I decided to be mechanical. They didn't actually have a dedicated aerospace program. So I think I just chose mechanical. And from there, horizons broadened a little bit. I was I got interested in biomedical engineering down the line. I did wind up working for GE Aviation for my first co-op to continue that trend. I'm that's kind of cool. But honestly, some of it was a turnoff too. I was I don't really want to work on this, missile launcher thing or this fighter jet. That's not really something that aligns with my values. And I think while the technology is really cool and the engineering behind that stuff is pretty cool, I just found myself gravitating towards stuff that helps other people in a more tangible, non-controversial way. And I was you could build this robotic arm for someone, that's pretty good. Unless they use this for evil, that could go a different way. But naturally, I was oh, that could be a pretty good direction to go in. So long story short, with engineering, I was continued to be interested in that. Even today, even though I'm pretty far removed from actual technical engineering, that stuff still interests me. So I still have that interest. And my dad, funny enough, once I gravitated away from traditional mechanical engineering, he still sends me these PhD programs in Germany for engineering. I was I'm not doing that. I'm done. That's not my life anymore. He goes, there, you can work for Siemens. I was why? What do you mean I can work for? I was I don't understand a lot of this, any of this stuff anymore. But I think it's funny. Even I consider myself, I've made it to a certain point, and he's still pushing me into that, hey, this guy works for, National Grid or something as an engineer, or he has his own construction business. And I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like there's no interest there. So it's funny how like some things never change.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like no matter how high up you go, you're there's always something more. They're like, oh, you should be doing this.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. So all those younger listeners, you're not going to outgrow that. You're still always going to get all that feedback. Actually, kind of talking about your idea of making it, I think one of the things that Jenny and I found pretty interesting about you was that you were recognized for the Forbes 30 under 30. And there's been like a lot of articles and stuff that you were featured in just about your journey and also like through Scholarjet. So what was that journey like for you? And like, how did you handle kind of getting all those features or having that kind of recognition?
Yeah. So first of all, credit goes to Tuan, who was my co-founder at Scholarjet, for securing all of that press, publications, attention, stuff like that. To this day, I still do not like the limelight. I tend to. It's funny, at Compt, my current company, we have a dedicated PR person now, and I lead product and customer success at our organization. And aside from the CEO, I've been one of the other people on the leadership team who needs to be like featured and so on and so forth. So she jokingly calls me Cover Boy Joe now because there's a lot of things where I have to like, give a comment and so on and so forth. I still get a little bit uncomfortable each time, but I think it was crazy so Scholarjet, we started late 2015, early 2016 while we were still in college. And, we had no idea what we were doing, and over like the years, we got these accolades. We won all these pitch competitions. We partnered with some really awesome, great companies. The Forbes thing is probably like the biggest public facing thing. And there are like all these like pictures and things like that. And I was just like, I don't like, a part of me was like, I don't get the hype. Like we haven't done anything yet. Like we got a bunch of kids, some scholarships, got some people hired. It's like, why what's all the fuss? Like we have to do something bigger before it's worth it. But for me, it was just kind of like, this is important for the credibility of our business and will actually help open a lot of doors. So to me, it's like, this is just something that needs to be done versus rather something I wanted to pursue. But I had to kind of get more comfortable with it, become more polished with a lot of speaking, just like in front of audiences and things like that. And it helped because over time I got better at pitching to potential customers, potential investors, talking to, potential partners and things like that. And all of those skills just kind of, help contribute to where I am today.
I kind of want to dive a little deeper into, you probably told the story a lot of times about like how you started a company in college and what that was like, and just like that whole experience and how that's like affected you.
Yeah. When I was younger, I wasn't sure when I was going to start a company, if I was going to start a company. It's not like, I don't have this like traditional, like I always wanted to work for myself when I was a kid. I was like, I wanted to be an engineer and build airplanes or robotic arms or something like that. So Tuan had the original idea for Scholarjet. And Tuan was an early SASE member as well. And one time he was just asking me to grab coffee or something at Cafe Bene on Mass Ave. Good memories there.
Classic.
We meet, he starts talking about this idea and I'm like, that's pretty cool. And we talked about it for a little bit. He's like, oh, your experience with SASE, you must be kind of excited about, giving back to the community, helping people out. I was like, yeah, definitely. I didn't really know where the conversation was going. And then later on, I think that night, he's like, oh, like, do you want to be my co-founder? I was like, what's a co-founder? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, what do I do here? And I was like, I got to think about it. At this point, I think it was my fourth year already, or entering my fourth year. I had just accepted a co-op, my third co-op at Medtronic as like a project management co-op. And I was like, I'm going to be pretty busy with my co-op and doing that, so being a co-founder. And I also had committed to the +1 program to get my master's in engineering management through the Galante program. I was like, I got a lot going on. And I told him, I got to think about it. I'll get back to you. I thought about it for maybe like an hour and I was like, let's do it. Why not? Like, what's the worst that could happen? This sounds like fun. So I think we both didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. Tuan had actually done this amazing feat of reading like 200 plus books about entrepreneurship, business, like all this stuff. And I had not. So I was just like, why me? Like, just because I started this like school organization, like you think I just know how to start a business? Like, does that really translate? Maybe. Let's find out. I was like, okay, cool. I think the first week we immediately just was like, well, it's important to meet people and expand their networks. And we started going to like all these networking events, like just to meet people who are starting businesses, who have started businesses, and just get all this perspective and just tell as many people about the idea as possible. To get us comfortable with it and to just get as much feedback as possible, as quick as possible. That was an be journey, and it was very, very uncomfortable at the beginning. Just like imagine being in a room with, honestly, it's usually a bunch of old white guys with money. I'll be honest, going in, being these like two kids still in college, I must have been 20, maybe 19 still. Just be like, hey, I'm starting this company called Scholarjet, and we're just trying to give kids money to go to college because it's the right thing to do. And, you know, of course, it's a more refined pitch than that, but that was the essence of it. And these people are just looking at us like, why? Like, why do you want to? That's not a business, that's a charity, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, over the next months, years, we have this continuous refinement. Like, what are we doing? What's the business model? How is this profitable? So on and so forth. And just learning all these things along the way, meeting all these people along the way. It was definitely hard the last 2 years of college, doing the master's plus the co-op. Like, I even worked part-time after my co-op because I needed money.
Oh, wow.
While also doing Scholarjet. At some point, I had like enabling engineering duties as well. So I was a very busy kind of last 2 years. I didn't sleep much, but I had this youthful energy, you know, that just kept propelling me forward. And it was honestly an awesome time. I think a big thing to touch upon was getting close to graduation, decide like, because this was really the fork in the road. You can almost do whatever you want while you're in college still. It's exploratory period. You have a safety net. You're not graduated yet, so on and so forth. But getting close to graduation is like, am I going to do this full time or am I going to get an engineering job? Getting my master's, I could probably get a really decent salary. Some of my co-ops might take me back, or I'm going to not have any money and start this company. And for me, I'm a pretty systematic person. And I was like, well, I don't have savings and I don't want to ask my parents who are struggling to like send me money to like, they just help me with college, you know, and now I'm going to say, I'm not going to get that, you know, nice cushy job out of college. And instead, I'm going to start a company that won't pay me anything. So I was like, you know what? The only way I will continue working on this full time if we win enough pitch competitions, get enough money in the bank to, you know, pay me at least this much so I can pay for rent and like eat food.
Right.
And we just went on this grind and we just did pitch competition after pitch competition. There was a huge one. We won $22,000. There was another one. We flew out to San Diego, which was like an awesome highlight of my memory of Scholarjet. We won like another $8,000 there. We won a few thousand here and there. We did all these competitions and just like, I actually even went to Chicago for like a SASE pitch competition.
SASE tank? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I think I brought home like $500.
Yeah.
Flight was like a little bit less than that. I broke even. That was pretty good. Got experience, got some exposure. It's pretty good. Well, we reached our milestone around like $40,000, $50,000 before I graduated. And I'm like, cool, we did it. And then by the end of that year, we needed an extra $50,000 or so. And like, I would kind of say like every 6 months, like, listen, I have to be realistic. I need some money to cover some expenses. But other than that, if I have enough, let's keep doing this. And we were able to win more competitions, finally get real paying customers, and eventually raise some investment from angel investors and started hiring more people. We got to pay them salaries. We got low on cash. We needed to raise more money, get more customers, got low on cash again. The cycle of an early stage startup. It was a big ride. I'm happy to dive into any particular part of that journey, but I'll pause there.
Yeah. No, that's it's really cool hearing the journey fully. And I know Jenny and I were talking about this earlier, seeing you up for SASE Tank too. I like remember being at that conference and just seeing you kind of come back to the SASE community, but you all like had like a full kind of product, I guess you could, or company like moving forward. Like that was really cool to see. Just as me, like that must have been like my first conference, my first national conference too. But I know you mentioned like a lot of like the cycles of all of it and mentioning that San Diego was one of the highlights. Can you touch a little more about like some of like the high moments that you like remember a lot and maybe some of the low moments that kind of made you think more about this process?
Sure. High moments, of course, there's a certain adrenaline of winning a certain pitch competition when there's thousands of dollars on the line and that will support your own well-being. So definitely high points where like, there's this Viet challenge, is a global entrepreneurship challenge for, you have to have one founder who's Vietnamese, and that was Tuan. But there were like hundreds of companies who applied to this around the world. And like there were multiple stages. And the final one was at like MIT or Harvard, somewhere in Cambridge. And we were pitching against all these people. And there was this one judge who was like so intimidating. I was so nervous at like this judge's questions. But you go up there, you do your pitch, you have the Q&A, you come down and you just wait. But some of those adrenaline rushes, like, all right, third place is this, not us. Oh man, what if we're not even third? Second place is this. Oh no, not us also. Like, oh, who's it gonna be? First place, Scholarjet. Oh, that moment of relief and excitement, like, and that happened a bunch of times. So those were high points. But even so, other high points, like when we got our first customers, I think one of our first real kind of big corporation customers, Akamai Technologies. And I had went to they were at like a career fair of some sort. And one of their recruiters was like asking me if I wanted a job. I was like, no, but what if I could help you find people who want to work for you? Let's talk about that. And that was awesome. To like a few months later, they turned into one of our first customers, paid us like thousands of dollars to set up this scholarship competition. And it was just a good ride there. But I will say some of my favorite moments have been telling the student / recent graduate winners of the competitions, of the scholarships, that they won, and hearing their gratefulness, their gratitude. They're like, hey, this $5,000 really like saved me this semester, or this interview with this company is really like I was so much struggling to find an internship, co-op, like a job, and I didn't think I was going to get an exposure like this. And just hearing all that feedback from all the students and just the people that we helped, definitely the most rewarding favorite part of Scholarjet.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear, because I do remember like interacting with you when we were still in school, and you're just like busy all the time. It seemed like you were on your last leg like every time I spoke to you. But it's great to hear that like it was so rewarding and that you were able to like balance everything kind of somewhat. But did you ever experience like burnout and that sort of thing as well, or you just like couldn't? You just felt like you really couldn't go doing like balancing everything with your work and all this stuff. And then how did you deal with that?
There were times when I was just like brutally tired, but I think a lot of this, and you can say this is motivation, partially trauma, I don't know, from my childhood, from my parents, but I was just like, all right, Northeastern costs a lot of money. Even with all the scholarships I had and financial aid and whatnot, it costs a lot of money. And I was like, I'm not just about to like completely throw away my education to like not make any money and so on and so forth. So kind of when the going got tough, and I remember there were days when it was like back-to-back meetings for like 12 hours and then a networking event. And then you had to get all the follow-ups done after all of that. And it would be days of that on end. I was sleeping maybe like 4 hours a night for like weeks on end. I was drinking Soylent, which I don't recommend, to replace my meals. I was like, I might as well save time. And it was not good. I was not taking care of myself. So part of what motivated me was like, I can't let this go to waste, this opportunity go to waste. Actually, I was honestly just so driven by the mission of what we were trying to do as well. I was like, there's a lot of kids out there who need help, whose lives could really genuinely be impacted by something like this. And the more successful we are, the more people we're going to help. And I was pretty energized throughout. There were times when, after sleeping 4 hours, weeks on end, and not eating great, not exercising as much, you feel like absolute trash. And your body just says like, no more. You shut down, you fall asleep and wake up like 13 hours later. And you're like, okay, I needed that. There were points where Tuan and I would just start arguing all the time. And like, we're both pretty chill people. Like we're pretty happy-go-lucky, like calm people on a day-to-day. But there was a point where we were just clashing on everything and arguing. And it would go in circles. It wasn't even like productive arguments. We kind of took a step back. It's like, hey, we gotta take care of ourselves. Like this is not working out for us. And it was like, I've been rock climbing for a while. I was like, I got to get back to my routine. I got to make sure I climb, 2-3 times a week, or run or cycle or do something to take care of myself. Exercising gives me more energy. That's not the case for everyone. Everyone has different ways of energizing themselves. But I knew like the more I exercise, the more energy I have. The better I eat, the more energy I have. These are things you know as an adult. as a college kid or younger, you're like, oh, I can just, burn the candle on both ends, no problem, forever. Mm-hmm. So a lot of focus on like, hey, it's important to eat real food. It's important to exercise and sleep a decent amount every night. The work will always be there tomorrow, and it's not necessarily worth it to kind of kill yourself to that extent. Took a lot to get to that conclusion. It wasn't a quick turnaround on that one.
So do you think now knowing what you know now, like you would have been able to get Scholarjet to where it was if you had kind of taken those actions like from the jump, or do you think it still needed that kind of grind like early on?
This is a hotly debated topic in the world. I think it's like, especially in the entrepreneurship, the early stage entrepreneurship tech company world, it's very hotly debated. Here at Compt, one of our core values is balance, core company values. And Amy, our CEO, she's amazing for so many reasons. But when we were shutting down Scholarjet and she was offering me to join Compt, she was actually one of our investors as well. That's another story. But she was like, I used to see you working crazy hours all the time. We worked in a co-working space together. She'd always see me there. She knew I never took vacation. She knew like how hard I was working. She saw it. And she goes, if you join my company, no nights, no weekends. I was like, are you crazy? Like, what do you mean? You're an early stage startup also. Like, you have to work nights and weekends. And she's like, no, you don't. She's been an executive at like 6 different companies. And she gave me this book called like, It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work, or something like that. It's probably somewhere back there. But it was just a different perspective of like, hey, if you take care of yourself, that is a good thing. And I was like, logically, it makes sense. But she was just like, if you start working nights and weekends, I'll just disconnect your stuff. I know you're super talented and smart, but she's like, I want you to respect that. And I don't want to bring that like hustle grind culture into Compt. And she's like, I want you to take at least 3 weeks of vacation. I'm like, what? I haven't taken a vacation in years. What do you mean vacation? Can't afford a vacation. Of course, she also paid, fair salary, so I could afford to take a vacation now. But about maybe 6, 7, 8 months in, I hadn't taken a vacation, maybe a couple of days here and there. She goes, you should take a week off. Actually, not you should. You have to take a week off in October or whatever it was, or I'll choose a week for you and you'll just take that week off. And she didn't do that in like this is our policy, so you have to do it. She's like, I care about you and you need to teach yourself to be able to disconnect and have balance in your life. And a couple of years later, I'm now preaching that to our new hires. I feel like I've been converted. But I found it so important. And I don't know if it's the stage of life that I'm in or if I'm truly kind of like, oh, this makes sense. A part of me always has this tendency when I'm hitting, 5, 6 o'clock, I'm like, I can work for another 5 hours. I can work till midnight. I can even work till 2 a.m. like that. I still kind of I feel like I have that ability, but there's no need to. And it's like, I can do all this other stuff with my life and work shouldn't be everything. But I got to be honest, I still have this debate where it's like, if I started a company again in the future and it was my own, would I gravitate towards that again? And I think it depends a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I'll have kids in the future. Maybe I'll say, after 6 p.m., that's family time. That's a hard boundary for me. But maybe after everyone's asleep, I sign back on. There's round 2. If I have that energy and capability. So I'm a little bit back and forth on that. I think to a certain extent, it does give you an edge to work a little bit longer, a little bit harder. But knowing when your personal burnout level will be, knowing how you take care of yourself, knowing how you compromise, like maybe you do go hard for a couple of weeks because there's something urgent that needs to happen because you're pushing for this really hard deadline and that pushing is going to help you make it there. Cool. But then reward yourself. Take some time off. That balance is really important. You can't just push as hard as you can for as long as you can. That much I know is true at this point.
At this point.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Well, I actually wanted to touch upon, you'd mentioned how you decided to, end Scholarjet and kind of like, what was going through your mind during that time and what your reasons and how you felt like closing that chapter? Because it was a pretty significant part of your career, right? So what made you make that decision, and how did you go about that?
All right, here come the tears. We're past that. Yeah, so Scholarjet was late 2015, early 2016, all the way up until mid 2020. And largely the biggest reason we shut down is because of the pandemic. So we eventually morphed into an early stage talent acquisition recruiting company. Essentially, companies would pay us to run these competitions. We would get a bunch of students, recent graduates, to apply to these competitions. They would win some money and get interviewed. Top candidates would get interviewed by those sponsoring companies. And things were going decently well. We had just raised some more investment from a couple of investors. We had a couple of new customers. And then basically mid-March 2020, pandemic hit, and all layoffs, all these hiring freezes, all these companies shutting down. And all of our customers were like, we can't run these competitions anymore. Like, we're not hiring. We just laid off half of our team. And every prospect, every potential customer that I had was like, either my point of contact got laid off themselves, or they told me like, we can't do this, or their company shut down. So basically our entire business model blew up almost overnight. And that was scary. It was terrifying. Like, we had some money in the bank, and then there was the payment protection plan loan. So basically the government helped subsidize small business, actually all businesses of any sizes, to go through this kind of global disaster pandemic. So that gave us some extra money in the bank as well. But about in March, I think we had maybe 6-7 months of runway. So we're like, hey, maybe we can kind of hunker down, reduce all of our spending, maybe find part-time jobs or something like that while the economy kind of gets itself back up. And then we can kind of resume our business and keep grinding. And then we're like, maybe we could pivot Scholarjet into a business model that makes more sense for this kind of new awful world we live in. For a minute, we were like, maybe, like, there's a lot of companies who thrived throughout the pandemic, actually Compt being one of them, but a lot of consumer facing companies thrived. And I was like, oh, maybe a consumer company can sponsor a competition, and like for basically like user generated content. It's like, oh, Jason likes those headphones. He could make this cool video about it, and they could use it as organic user generated content. We like thought about that. And ultimately, we're like, we're going to have to redesign our entire platform, which takes a lot of engineering resources. We're going to have to do a whole new set of advertising, marketing. We basically have to restart the business. And to do that and become profitable in like 6 months, I just like when Tuan, Francisco, and I and the team, we were talking about this, we're just like, I honestly don't think we can do that. And it was a really hard thing to admit and say, like, it'd probably be the more responsible decision and best for the whole team if we pulled the plug sooner than later and didn't just drag this out. And for us, for 3 co-founders, like, Scholarjet was a huge part of our identity, especially for me and Tuan. Nothing against Francisco, but he had a kid, and he has other things in his life that are important to him. But Tuan and I are these young single people still, and no kids, no other people really relying on us in that sense. And we're like, this was our whole life for like 4 or 5 years, and we're going to pull the plug on it. And it took, like, we basically had to say, but what's best for the team, what's best for us, is we're able to shut this down quickly and find other opportunities and, be respectful to our investors. If we can return any amount of their money back, we can do that. If we can give, some of our employees a little bit of runway to like get time to find the job, let's do that. And it just ultimately felt like the responsible decision. We ultimately didn't see a path forward that would allow us to get through it all. We tried to sell the company. There's like acquisitions or acqui-hire conversations going on. But when other players in the industry are struggling for the same reasons as you, who's going to buy your company at that time? So it was tough. It was a hard decision. I was super fortunate, and Francisco as well, that Amy, one of our investors, I feel like she kind of like half smiled when I was telling her we were shutting down, because she's like, I'm looking for someone, to bring on the team. I'd love for you to be there. Francisco as well. The opportunities and timing just worked out in our favor there. So I took maybe 2 weeks off after not taking, maybe it was like 10 days, not even between like running this company at full speed for like 4 years plus college and everything like that. And I was like, holy crap, that was like my baby. That was my life. That was my identity. And then it's like, poof. So it was a big transitionary period. It's like, I have evenings and weekends now. I don't have to freak out about paying my team on next payroll. I don't have to think about raising capital. Sure, I had lots of new responsibilities at the company, but also Amy is a seasoned executive and she largely knows what she's doing. And be able to learn and rely on that was just a completely different feeling. So it definitely helped having that kind of support system, even though as employee number 5 at this company, it's still super early stage, but to have, Amy and a team that was a little bit more experienced was super helpful and made that transition easier. I know that's a lot.
No, that's great that was there for you. And it seems like having that, I don't want to like call it that, but like someone like a mentor for you there at Compt. I know like now kind of transitioning to Compt, wanted to learn a little more about like your position now. I know you've like been there for a bit. I think I saw on LinkedIn too, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you just recently get a promotion as VP product and operations? So yeah, congratulations.
Yep. Thank
you. Is
you.
that like just this month? I think that's what it said on LinkedIn.
So it became official July 1st. Recent promotion.
Gotcha. So what has like changed from what you were doing beforehand at Compt?
Hard question, but essentially when I joined, a lot of the focus was for kind of like customer success. So basically onboarding customers, even handling support, renewals, basically being that main point of contact for any customer who kind of signed a contract with the company. But also on the product side, I had done a lot of product management at Scholarjet, and that kind of responsibility just started to grow and grow and grow as well. So over the last 2 years, I joined Compt in June 2020. So it's 2 years and just about a month now. I've taken ownership of customer success product, but I've also been kind of on the leadership team at Compt now. And we're a small team, so this was just kind of me and Amy for a good portion of it. And just kind of being that right-hand person to think about what's our PTO policy? What do we do about, working hours when we have people across time zones? What about our benefits? What about, our leadership team? Like, how should we build that out? Like, what is our strategy? Kind of all these conversations I started to get more and more involved in over the years. And now that we're 16, maybe 17 people, I can hire more people too. So we raised $14 million of funding in March, April. Time flies. I don't understand time anymore. But now I was like, we can hire people where I don't have to do everything. And I hired some people on my team. We're hiring on the engineering team. I hired a product designer recently. And it feels weird because I still want to be like, on the ground, kind of like with the hand-to-hand combat with like these customer interactions and stuff like that. But it's also important for me to zoom out and think more strategically and think longer term with all the kind of context that I have around the business. So the promotion is largely to allow me and help me to zoom out more, think longer term, hire other people to kind of help with the management of a lot of the day-to-day interactions and largely a lot of what I was doing for the past couple of years, and think about, all right, what is our product vision? What is our exit strategy? What is our engineering organization going to look like in 6 months from now, 12 months from now? What are the big things that our competitors are doing that we are not, or we are doing that they are not? And just kind of zooming all out and kind of multiple angles and just being more strategic. And it's a lot of stuff that I was trending towards, but now it's a little bit more official. And we're building out like a whole leadership team as well. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. And also, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly is Compt and like what do they do? Because I don't think I know that much about the company.
Sure. Yeah. So Compt is essentially a stipend management platform. What we do is we help companies set up these perk stipends, which essentially is, you can think about it as like an allowance or a fund that you give your employees every X cadence for some purpose. A simple example is your company might give you $100 a month towards your health and wellness. So traditionally companies might be like, hey, here's a gym membership, or here's a meditation app, or here's, snacks in the kitchen. That doesn't work for largely remote companies. and also doesn't include everybody. And kind of a core principle of ours is having belonging and just being accessible, inclusive to as many people as we possibly can, if not everyone. So if instead of saying, here's your gym membership, but I go rock climbing, I don't want this gym membership, or here's your meditation app at Headspace. No, I don't like Headspace. I use Compt. It's here's $100 a month to use on your health and wellness as you see fit. If you want to go yoga classes, great. If you want to go rock climbing, great. If you want a pair of running shoes, great. If you want a massage, great. So it really broadens the inclusivity of any kind of benefit program. So whether it's here's $100 a month for health and wellness, here's $1,000 a year for your professional development, here's $300 a quarter for whatever you want that makes you feel good. Here's cell phone internet. So you can do almost like an infinite variety of types of benefits through our platform. And we basically make sure that all the administrative part is as easy as possible. You stay tax compliant. I'll say the best part is seeing kind of happy employees say like, wow, it feels really good that my company like cares about me and treats me like an adult and doesn't just kind of say, here's your coffee, here's your this. It's like, I know what I need. I need childcare this month, or I want to buy treats for my pet, or this and that. And employees kind of just being able to do what they want and benefit from that. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, I never even thought about that in the context of virtual work. Now that's a lot more popular. I'm kind of curious now too, because my sister does like full-time work from home. And I know like before, like, or I think like the office too, like had all those like snacks, all those things that obviously are not being accounted for now. So curious to know like what her and like her team thinks about that. But I never thought about that in the context.
Well, you let them know to talk to me and we can have a conversation. I don't do sales anymore, so I'm harmless,
That's how you let their guard down and then you go in. I think you were talking about like in high school that you didn't have a lot of the skills of being able to basically do these pitches or be in sales or anything like that. So were there certain things that were, or like tips or tricks that were kind of turning points for you? And what kind of stuff did you think was very transferable between, let's say, like SASE to Scholarjet or like Scholarjet to Compt?
Yeah, I will really say that SASE was probably like becoming in a leadership role very early on in college. I think I said this earlier, kind of changed my trajectory a little bit. Even something as simple as running e-board meetings and kind of like the weekly chapter meetings and things like that. That's not something everyone has exposure to. And that was like the first time where I was kind of like in almost like a real leadership position. And at first I was probably very awkward and very nervous. I'm still an awkward person to an extent, but having a great e-board to kind of back me up behind that, like kudos to Vicky, especially. She was my VP early on. And that kind of getting those reps in of just being able to, even though it's just a bunch of college kids, so college kids can be mean, and just getting those reps in at the meetings and so on and so forth. I think that was pivotal in bringing up my confidence and saying like, I can be in a leadership role. I'm not just this quiet, nerdy engineer. I can speak up. I can vocalize my opinions about these certain things, and I can kind of organize a team around a certain goal, a certain vision. And from there, I think that definitely translated into later leadership positions and helped with the confidence to join Scholarjet. I was like, I have started something before, and it was, like, I didn't do the initial incorporation, so also kudos to Jen, Chu, and Leo Buen for kind of doing that, like being that original president, vice president, right when I was still a freshman. I think my original thing was like I was like freshman rep for like a couple months before they went and graduated. And
right. I remember this. Yeah.
Yep. So from there, SASE definitely gave me a lot of confidence in myself. And I also like a little bit had to put up a front because a large part of the organization of SASE was helping empower other people to advocate for themselves and be more confident, do well on interviews, get hired, just be comfortable with themselves in so many different ways. And if I couldn't do that as president of, our chapter, then it's like how could, another member kind of see that for themselves as well. So I think a lot of it was like, a little bit of fake it till make it. And then it just like, they did kind of work. But even at Scholarjet, those networking events, I think national, regional conferences definitely helped with networking. It's like, what is networking really? And we had like networking preparation workshops and so on and so forth at SASE, which were fun and helped prep a little bit. But when it was like the early days of Scholarjet, like also just getting those reps in, we would go to like 3-4 events per week, and it was exhausting. Like it was just meeting all these people, following up with them, building all these new relationships, and just like putting yourself out there and just being open to this like feedback that it's like a lot of people are like, that's a dumb idea. Like, why would you do that? Or like, where's the AI? Where's the blockchain? Where's the crypto? Or like, what is all this? Like, you're trying to help people and they're not a nonprofit. Like, this isn't a real business, but continue to show up. And that multiple of those would happen in a single night of networking too.
Oh no.
And just continuing to do that over and over again and knowing what you're working towards. I think that getting those reps in, getting the practice in, and then seeing the success. Like once you see a couple of points of success, then it's like, you know what, this wasn't for nothing. So you just got to keep showing up and hype yourself up whichever ways you can too.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of want to go back into like the start of SASE too, because well, I joined as a freshman, but then I kind of saw it grow like throughout obviously like my college career as well. And then basically taking on those leadership positions that you guys left for us as well, right? So how did it feel to start it and then see where it went, you know, after you left?
Yeah, it was honestly awesome to see certain traditions keep going, certain things evolve and adapt. Unfortunately, I disconnected a little bit like my last year because of scholarship and all that other stuff. So I was a little bit removed, but I still saw kind of like posts and I chatted with you, Jenny, here and there. Jason, I saw you at the climbing gym, stuff like that. And I still interact with a lot of members outside of, you know, regular meetings, but it was awesome to see like the e-board pie in your face and see people like fundraising for the conferences and just kind of like the little things like there was like interviewing workshops, like career panels, things like that. We had a relationship with, I think, GE, P&G, and I think those people kept showing up. So I'd see them once in a while as well. I'm like, that's so awesome that like a lot of these foundational things continued, but then seeing like there's like new swag that came out with like a new little like husky little thing. I was, oh, that's cute. Like we have like the SASE mascot thing. That's awesome. And just seeing the membership also grow. Like there were meetings when we have like 5-6 people early on, and then seeing like 20, 30, like 40 people in the room. And I was like, holy crap, like this is a real organization. So a lot of it is like just proud of the future eBoard members, like the two of you who added your own flavor, your own twist on it, and just kind of kept things going. And it's a good group of people.
Yeah, SASE also changed my life too. It helped me get my job, helped me with like, you know, all this public speaking, and then even just starting like these side projects too, which is pretty fun. This podcast itself, right? Like I've always wanted to make one. I was like, why not just go through the avenue of creating it through here? Like it's pretty cool. And I can use it as an excuse to talk to my friends or like, reconnect with people, right?
What do you want?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then now we have like that audience there too. Yeah. The support system from SASE of like the podcast or just any endeavors that you have through SASE, like even an eBoard, it's just been like such a like confidence booster as well. Like we're really in the beginning stages of it and we're learning so much about just producing something in general and improving our public speaking skills. And luckily there are people who are still supporting us the whole way through and giving us advice or helping us out, or like you coming onto the show and bringing on like a cool episode about your professional journey.
Warm tinglies.
Another, I guess, like warm notion. I remember the first time that I met you, Joe, was at conference. And that was like my first regional conference I had been to. I had just joined eBoard like that semester. And I just remember that you guys like really just made it like a fun experience. We drove down to Philly and it was like, okay, like I'm seeing the value in SASE and like being on an eBoard position, but it was kind of like, oh, you could have fun too. The fun part of networking, the fun part of meeting all these other SASE people, like not only in your chapter, but other people like from for that conference, like from the region. So I'm just wondering if you had any like fun conference stories that you kind of like look back at and remember fondly about.
I was saying before we got started that I feel like my memory has totally just like I'm only, I'm turning 20 in a few weeks. And I was like, I can't remember what happened like 10 years ago. Holy crap, it was 10 years ago. I remember in Dallas, I think there was this like outdoor sand volleyball court that we like stumbled across.
Yes, I remember this.
Super fun. Like a lot of people just was like, we were in like conference clothes, I think mostly. It's like roll up your slacks, like roll up your sleeves, whatever, play some volleyball on this like random beach court. I remember that was super fun. The drive to Philly itself was like, I feel it was stressful for the people driving there because like I got all this responsibility. I don't even think I have my license yet. Being a New Yorker, you don't get your license until basically you need it. But Elisa, I think she drove. Vicky drove a portion of it as well. I can't remember if there's anyone else.
Leanne?
But just kind of what?
What did Leanne drive?
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this.
I think
too.
Reese drove when I met you, Joe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I miss a lot of people.
Yeah.
But no, driving to Philly, running up those stairs feeling like Rocky. Just, walking around the cities at night after the conferences was always fun to me. It's like you have the actual experience of the conference and you have all these speakers who inspire you and so on and so forth. But just being able to, have experiences in different cities with, these people who are learning and growing alongside you, that's always fun. So there was Pittsburgh, like it's just like I never really traveled growing up, and like being in Philly, Pittsburgh, Houston, Dallas is like this is my first times in these cities. Just walking around and exploring just various places was fun. I think I went to like an aquarium and a zoo in one of the cities as well. I was like, oh, this is cool. I like animals, like conferences. But yeah, it's good times.
Making the most of it. I know you mentioned like not having your license, but now you're kind of into this suburbia life. Well, first off, congratulations on being a homeowner. But
that's awesome.
Now you mentioned like now you have a car, house, a dog, the whole picture of suburbia, I guess you could say. So how has that transition been from being like a city person before being in Brooklyn and Boston?
Yeah. I mean, Brooklyn and Boston, most of my life up until in 2020, I moved to Quincy, which is still very accessible to Boston, the city. But then 2021, I moved to Braintree, which is like a little bit further south, a little bit out of the city. And then it's
pretty
like
far.
Franklin. Like I was like, okay, let's do it. A part of it was like unplanned, actually largely unplanned. Like our rent, they told us, and when we were living in Braintree, like it's going up $800 a month. I was like, that is insane. Like why would I spend that much money on rent when that could go towards a mortgage of some sort? And I was like, I think the financially responsible decision is to try and buy a house. And interest rates were still relatively low. And I was like, let's look. And me and my partner were like, where do we want to buy a house? I don't know, somewhere in Massachusetts. To start looking around. We found a place that we really liked, and it ultimately worked out. The second place we liked, first one didn't work out. There were like 16 offers on that first place.
Oh my God.
Like people were bidding like $100,000 over. It's absurd. Wow. But this place worked out for us, and I was it was for the better. It's awesome. No complaints. A part of me still feels a little bit in between though. So for those thinking about, should I move out to the burbs? You got to think about what's important to you. What's important to us right now is, having the space. We both largely work from home, having our separate office spaces. We have, a 60-pound pit bull lab mix, Tango. He's adorable. We also have two cats. But the dog loves running around the yard. I love running around the yard with him. I have a lot of energy to burn. And just having this kind of like ability to just like, I can like go outside, sit on my deck and just like stare at this, like, I don't know, really 120-foot tall tree, and it's like beautiful and it's just quiet. And I'd say like 90% of the time it's like awesome. Like I'll just leave my house and go on a run around the neighborhood, and it's beautiful, it's quiet. I can't walk anywhere really. that's kind of one of the things I miss. I loved walking. I still love walking around the city and exploring and just kind of trying new places, like popping into a random store, eating good food that's not a chain restaurant. I'm sorry, Franklin. But like it's kind of a balance. Like I'm not too far away. I can take about 40 minutes and I'm in the city. And if I do that a few times a month, I'm pretty happy. I feel like I get my fill. And I'm probably gonna have kids in a few years, and that's probably gonna be important to have a good school system and space and, a yard for kids to play around in and so on and so forth. A part of me was like, did I do this too quickly and did I like miss out on anything? And a part of me is like, this is kind of what so many people hope and dream for and what I kind of want with my life. And I'm like right on track. In fact, I feel like I'm a little ahead of schedule, and it's a good feeling. I feel like happy about what I've accomplished. So long way of saying like, I'm getting adjusted. I'm very happy, but a lot of people, my friends, my age, similar, still in the city, and I kind of miss being able to say like, hey, just come over on like a Wednesday night, let's hang out. Now it's like it's an hour each way to get to me. Right. It's not as spontaneous, so a piece of me misses that, but largely it's like it's where I am with my life now, and it's like no complaints.
That's awesome. Wow.
I wish I
It
could
sounds
walk.
so adult saying that too.
I know. I know.
Yeah, we started with like, oh, the homeowner thing is like a real adult thing, and then you mentioned
Yeah.
kids, and we're like, oh, that's like the real adult like stages over there. Like
It is. It
that's
is.
like the big step.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see.
Are there any points, like, I guess, in your life now that you still feel like a kid in? Like, you're like, oh, like, I still really enjoy, like, doing these things, these activities that I used to really like.
Yeah. Home ownership has actually made me feel more like a kid, which is kind of backwards. But like we moved in, and like my closet over here, there was this like rod and thing that I didn't like, and it was like a poor use of space. So I'm like, I want to design my own closet system, and I was like, I got to take this old stuff out. I tried to like pry off these bars on the wall. I put like 6 holes in my drywall. And I was like, crap, I didn't know how to do this. And I was like, I guess I have to YouTube how to fix drywall holes now. I'm like, as a mechanical engineer, I feel like none of that has translated into practical home ownership skills. Like my sink was loose, and I was like, I don't know why this is wobbling. I don't know how to fix this. So I felt like very much like starting over in this new experience. Like, okay, I have to learn how to do this and learn how to do this. I never mowed a lawn in my whole life until a few days after buying our house. I was like, I guess I have to mow my lawn now. My partner, she grew up in the suburbs, and she's like, it's not that hard. You just push the thing and go around. I was like, wait, you got to pick up sticks and rocks and stuff? Oh, a couple of weeks ago, I had to take down a wasp nest. That I felt like I was running away from that nest. Let me tell you.
Sounds scary.
But all these kind of things that I've never done before have definitely helped me feel like, oh, like I'm still figuring things out. And you know, I still rock climb, which I started in college, but it still makes me feel young. I still pick up things all the time. Like I picked up running in the pandemic every now and then. I think me and a couple of friends, they're like, oh, let's play basketball. I never really played basketball growing up. I don't like basketball, but I was like, why not? So I'm always down to just try things. And that attitude continues to make me feel young. Board games make me feel young.
Oh, yeah.
Damn.
And now I can afford to buy whatever board games I want. Great. So there are things like that.
Wow. You kind of just like checked off all the hobbies that I've basically been doing like lately, like basketball, board games, climbing,
There we go.
actually running too. I've been trying to get Jenny to run more as well.
I can't.
For
well, you're training for a half marathon. I'm not. So
as someone who ran like 4 times a week for like almost a year straight, I would not recommend running to anyone. I hate running. It's the worst. I really don't like
I just
it.
can't get into it like that. Like it's
so hard to get into.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why I do. I went for like a long bike ride this past weekend. I was like, this was enjoyable. I still got to work out, could see all this stuff. It was a blast. Why do I run? Like, why do I do this?
That's so funny because I did like cross country in high school, and talking to people who did cross country or even people who like from work who run now, I think like the common consensus of people who run is like, why am I doing this to myself? But I'll wake up tomorrow morning to go on that like 4-mile run. And it's like, no matter like that mindset is always going to be there, even like how committed people are. It's like really odd that running does that to you. But I think like we're kind of closing in on some time. So we have a couple rapid fire questions for you before we kind of end the episode. And I think to start off, you mentioned climbing. So what is one goal that you have for climbing next?
Yeah, so I've climbed like 1 V8 in my climbing career.
Whoa.
For the listeners, that's really, really good. That's like really hard.
I think it was a little bit soft, you know, it was like just my body type style climb. Like it just all the pieces worked out to make this happen. I would love to climb, you know, a few more V8s. Long story short, I feel like once you get to like the 6-7 level, you can't just climb to get better at climbing. Now you need to like train. Like you need to hangboard, you need to do all this core workout, shoulder workouts, all this. You basically need to work out to get better at climbing. That to me was a little bit less fun. So I'm kind of like stuck at this like 6-7 level right now. But I kind of just gotta put on my adult pants and just like, hey, if I want to do more 8s and I want to start climbing outdoors more, I haven't done much of that at all. So I want to be able to do that and learn to sport climb. I 99% of the time boulder. So yeah. A couple things to look forward to in the climbing world.
Nice.
Build my own wall in my backyard. I want to do
Oh
that.
wow.
That's the dream.
That's
The dream.
all the gyms are like 30 minutes away. Like
Uh-huh.
Lincolnwood is like 30 minutes away. And I'm like, what if I just go to my backyard and have this like moon board? And I was like, that'd be awesome.
That
So
sounds really cool.
bucket
Wow.
list.
Yeah.
You could
Can't-
definitely build out something cool. Like you could change like the angles. Like it's like
It'll be
Oh
like
my
the
God.
first time I'm thinking in like mechanical engineering.
I was gonna
world.
say that's such an engineering thing to do.
I was like, do they have like a pulley to adjust
Yeah.
the thing, like motors, like pistons or some sort? I was like, this could be a really interesting project that might take me like 5 years, you know? Like,
Yeah. Dang.
but when it's there, it'll be awesome.
Okay. Next question. Best book you ever read or would recommend to someone else?
oh man, I kind of thought I should prepare for this one because that's a really hard question.
Yeah, it is hard.
You know what? I'll just recommend one recently that I read and just really found helpful. It's called The Leader Lab, and it's by an organization called Life Labs. And I think one of the authors is Tanya Luna. So basically, this Leader Lab book is like a compilation of all these skills, methodologies over like some of the most common leadership skills, and then how to like leverage those skills in different situations, giving feedback, coaching, one-on-ones, long-term planning, managing your priorities, so on and so forth. So it's been a really helpful book to kind of just like round out a lot of these leadership skills that I've kind of like danced around over the years, but this kind of really solidified that knowledge.
Oh, cool.
Nice. Okay. Do you have any stories of funny fails from networking?
Funny fails from networking. Let me think for a sec. None. I feel like this is just a giant blur of failure that's like in the early days, not knowing how to like introduce myself properly or just like diving in like, hi, I'm Joe, I'm starting a company called Scholarjet, this is what we do, like before they even have like a chance to like react or anything like that. Just like blurting out like as much as I can. So I remember a few instances of that were just kind of like awkward, and like what I learned largely from that experience is like let them do most of the talking. They'll feel good about talking about themselves. You've probably heard some variation of this before. You say a little bit about, you know, what you do and just try to make it memorable. And those are largely been the best, most productive interactions. So if it's very like purposeful targeting networking, you know. So yeah.
What has the response been when you like started off really quickly? Like, do they like I don't know, like how was that?
It's a lot of people are just taken aback. Like they're just like overwhelmed. Like I wasn't even listening. I was like drinking my drink and you just came up to me and like, just say? Like I was like, oh, I like sometimes people look like they're listening and their head is somewhere else. And there's a couple of those, but like there have been some people that like slow down. Like I tend to speak quicker when I'm like excited or nervous or however. And if they slow down, I did not catch any of that. Or they've been just like, do I know you? I'm sorry. I thought this was a networking event. This is the point of, you know, you're supposed to not know people. So it's a funny thing. Some people have been like, wow, that's really awesome. And that's what encourages you to keep going. And some people will be like, you know what, you should talk to this person. And like, they'll almost like match your enthusiasm. And like, if you can get like 20, like, what did you just say to me? Or like, I don't care or whatever. And then you'll get that one person who's just like fully stoked about what you're saying. And you're like, it was worth it to like suffer through all these other interactions. Thank you.
Okay. Next question, your dream vacation or next trip?
This is a very timely question because I am due for a vacation and I don't want to be forced out, you know, but I actually am taking the week of the 8th off, and me and my partner, I was like, where do you want to go? She was like, I don't know, Italy or something. I was like, do you really want to go to Italy? She was like, maybe. And I was like, well, what about like Greece or what about like somewhere else? And I really had like no good input. She's like, what do you want to do on vacation? I was like, I don't know, like zip line. And that was like the best thing I could come up with. I was like, zip line. I don't know. And I was like, riding ATV or something. And I was like, we both recently got like our motorcycle licenses. We want to do like trail riding and stuff like that. I don't want to ride on the street. So anyone who does, good for you. But I think I'm scared of, you know, that. But I think like the ideal vacation involves like hiking, being in nature, fast moving vehicles through nature, potentially,
Okay.
and I love animals, potentially animals. Long story short, a couple years ago, we stayed on this like yurt in a goat farm, and there's just like 40 baby goats and like little goats and things like that, and dogs and cows and stuff like that. 2 days was good, but it was really fun. I like civilization as well.
Right.
Wait, so where are you gonna go for all of the ATVing and
This
ziplining?
this honestly, this was decided a few hours ago.
Oh,
we were like it doesn't make sense only for like a short 5-day vacation to go all the way to Europe. So we're like, let's just go to like the Caribbean, do that like stereotypical random vacation. I was like, do people use travel agents anymore? Is that a thing? Do I just look for Airbnb? I literally didn't know how to book a vacation. I was like, I don't know what to do. There's like a thing for like St. Lucia or St. Lucia. I don't even know how it's pronounced, which is
I've seen that. Okay.
and it's one of these beautiful islands in the Caribbean. I found a good deal for it. I was like, cool. And I bought the flights. And then a few minutes later, my partner, she's like, all right, I booked the resort. And that's it. I was like, cool, we're going on vacation. On the next episode, I'll let you know how it goes. They have ATVing. You can rent, like, you can go kayaking. You could go zip lining. You can like drive through a volcano or something.
Oh my God. Like, it checks all your boxes.
It does. I'm excited.
Damn. Yeah. Well, have fun. I know that's like coming up soon,
awesome.
but yeah, that sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay. What was something small that recently happened that made you really happy? And I guess you talked about your vacation, so maybe not that because that happened today.
Sure. This might be a little bit of a sappy cop-out answer, but my pets are hilarious and adorable. I have these 2 flat-faced kitties and my dog. They're all goobers, as we call them. Like, I found my dog and the small kitty who's like, she's much younger than the other one. And they were just like napping together, cuddling. And I just looked at them and I was like, this is adorable. Like, I'm allergic to cats and dogs. And I have 2 cats and a dog. I don't know why I do this. But I just looked at them and just like, this is why I sneeze all the time for you guys. Yeah, small thing.
That's really
I feel like the theme
really being an adult, like having pets that you're allergic to. Yes, it is.
the theme of this episode is that you'll go through like a lot of pain for the small moments. So like
that's what climbing is, right?
That's true.
Okay. Well, I think we can wrap up the rapid fire questions now. And then for our last thing that we like to ask before we wrap up the episode is in the theme of the podcast. So one thing you did recently that made you feel like an adult, or something that you wish that you had known sooner that you would give advice to, I guess, younger people. Not that we're that old, really.
Yeah,
but
we're close in age.
Still, yeah, right? We are. Yeah.
Don't isolate me like this.
No, I didn't mean it to cross that way.
In the spirit of the podcast. Things I wish I knew sooner. I mean, we touched upon this earlier, but like kind of just general like house maintenance stuff, car maintenance stuff. It's like very practical, important skills to have. I didn't do like a lot of woodwork or machining work or things like that, even as a mechanical engineer. So having those skills, I feel like just make you so much more useful. It's like, oh, if you can cut wood and nail stuff together, like it's so useful. So I would invest in some practical. They used to have like home ed courses like back in the day. I didn't have any of that. I grew up in Brooklyn. I don't know, but I think any of those skills, even if you rent an apartment, like if you punch a hole in your drywall, knowing how to fix that, it's a pretty good skill. Saves your security deposit.
That's true.
Little things.
Yeah, I've been trying to learn how to do more car things too, like how to change a tire. I feel like that's like you need that in case you get a flat, or just like changing your oil. You save a lot of money instead of going to a dealership. Yeah, just like those things, because they would overcharge you. Well, they charge for labor and then they charge for the parts, so it's like a lot more. But yeah, just learning those things.
I'll just kind of say, as I'm learning all these things, like I called my dad and I was like, hey, like, how do I do this? And I was like, oh, this thing is like really hard. And he just said, like, nothing is hard. You just have to learn how to do it. And like, that kind of stuck with me recently. Everyone's like, oh, is there any like advice that like someone has shared you and like all that stuff? And I was like, nothing is hard. You just got to learn how to do it. And I'm like, that's actually, it's great. It's pretty true. Once you learn how to do it, it's not really hard anymore. And it's been kind of like, it gives you a little bit of confidence to just say like, hey, like you can learn anything given, enough time and effort. And I'll go back to the grad. I was intimidated by 6 holes in my wall. I learned how to do it. And I'm like, I can punch a hole right now and I know how to fix it. I feel good about that.
So much more freedom. Yeah. Yeah. That's some good advice. It's like really short, but right to the point. I like that.
Yeah. That's my dad.
All right. Well, Joe, thanks again for joining us on the Adult Table. This was honestly a really fun episode and learned a lot from your journey. I think a lot of times like we'll have people more in like technical like STEM fields. So it's really cool to hear someone with a different background like that. And also cool to kind of reconnect after being on like Northeastern SASE together. So it's been a really good time having you on the podcast. And for everyone else listening, do you want to plug your LinkedIn for anyone to kind of reach out to you for any questions or anything?
Sure. If anyone by any chance has any questions, want to reach me for any reason, I think I'm Joseph Alim on LinkedIn. So full name. I'm probably one of the few that you'll find on there. So don't hesitate to reach out. If you're starting a business, you want to bounce ideas off someone, or you're a mechanical engineer trying to go rogue into the startup world, hit me up. Happy to chat.
Well, don't forget to subscribe so you also know when episodes come out. And you can also follow us on Instagram at the Adult Table Podcast for any updates.
And I'm Jason Chin.
And I'm Jenny Chung. And we'll see you next time at the Adult Table. Thanks for listening.